Hello. Thank you so much for joining us for another edition of the Power Hour. Tonight, this is our forum for Pittsburgh City Controller. Last week was our county controller, who, as you know, has a ton to do with the financial health of our county. Let me get on screen. This position is similar for the city. So we have three candidates here with us today. We want to thank them for being here. We have Mark DePasquale, Rachael Heisler, and Tracy Royston. Mark and Rachael are both here on stage with us. Tracy is joining us virtually. So we're grateful to have them here and look forward to asking some really good questions.
Yes, and all candidates who are running for city controller were invited. And unfortunately, Kevin Carter had another event that he had already committed to, so he was unable to be here tonight. How this forum is going to go, we're going to read the bios of the candidates. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to have an opening statement, and then we will have some conversations. And a little bit about our candidates tonight, as Ross has already mentioned them. Our first candidate, Mr. Mark DePasquale, is from a proud Pittsburgh whose family has been dedicated to public service for over 3 generations. As a private citizen, he has been the owner and operator for Linda's Diner, a Northside institution, and has also served as operations director for Hyatt Regency. His public service has also taken him from auditor for the city of Pittsburgh to deputy director with the recorder of deeds, and his current position as project manager for the city of Pittsburgh Public Works, Parks, Facilities, and Renovations team. He has overseen over 30 projects totaling over $60 million, with a consistent record of delivering work on time and on budget. It is his work with contractors and local service providers that has inspired him to run for city controller, as the current system of engagement has led to higher prices for all and less diversity.
Rachael Heisler is the Deputy Controller for the City of Pittsburgh, where she oversees the daily operation of the Controller's Office. Previously, she spent 7 years as a Senior Advisor at the Committee for Responsible Federal Budget, the country's leading federal fiscal watchdog group, running the organization's external affairs efforts. She served on the staff of Congressman Jason Altmaier for 6 years, and she worked on the inaugural campaign of U.S. Senator Bob Casey. Rachael's on the board of the Northside Food Pantry Advisors, the Allegheny YMCA, Cafe Momentum Pittsburgh, and the Allegheny City Central Association. She serves as a Pennsylvania representative with the United States Navy's Community Ambassador Program, a 2022 Bachelor Fellow with the Jewish Federation of Greater Pittsburgh, and the chair of the City of Pittsburgh's 22nd Ward Democratic Committee. Rachael has a bachelor's degree from the University of Pittsburgh and a master's degree from Penn State University. Her social media tags are at Rachael Controller and at Rachael Heisler.
Tracy Royston is a lifelong Pittsburgher with a deep background in government and nonprofit management. Since 2018, she has played a critical role in the leadership and management of the County Controller's Office, including serving as acting County Controller. In addition to acting Controller, she has worked both inside the office and out to improve the lives of the people of Allegheny County. One of the highlights of her time at the County Controller's Office was working closely with Controller Chelsea Wagner to plan and execute a series of forums on community health care to allow community members to share their stories and connect to resources during the UPMC Highmark conflict. These stories directly enabled then Attorney General Josh Shapiro to build his case to settle the dispute and maintain healthcare access for thousands of residents. She began her career in public service in the administration of former City of Pittsburgh Mayor Tom Murphy and worked for 18 years in the local nonprofit sector, focusing on program management, fundraising and allocations, government relations, and public policy. Tracy is ready to take action on day one to partner with the schools, recoup funds from our nonprofits and bring the controller's office to the community so that we can have a government that works for all. And these are the candidates for tonight. And so, to start off, we'll go in alphabetical order. Mark, Rachael, and Tracy. You each have 2 minutes for an opening statement, and your 2 minutes will start as soon as you begin.
And 30 minutes, 30 seconds to respond. Anytime we're about to mention, anytime we're going to
Good evening, God bless. My name is DePasquale. I'm a third generation Pittsburgher. My family settled here in 1982. And for over 100 years, each generation has been doing community service. Currently, I'm a project manager for the city of Pittsburgh. For over a decade, I have been the leading advocate in City Hall for a dedicated funding source to develop facilities for youth and senior services. My father, DePasquale, is a regulator and city council president and worked diligently to promote the civil rights movement in Pittsburgh. I am ready to modernize the office of city controller. My key initiatives are assisting minority business owners to obtain business within city economy and state governments. Audit the land bank in Pittsburgh to ensure development of boarded-up homes and bring affordable housing without gentrification to the city of Pittsburgh. Demand school board budget accountability, and that it addresses the rising school violence and plummeting graduation rates. Furthermore, I pledge I will never use the influence of this office to promote a personal political career, and I will never run for an office affected by the controller's poverty powers. And I'd like to ask my opponents to make the same pledge. The two offices to use as a stepping stone, and it is not in the public interest in true public service. And I'm running for this to be a true public service. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi everyone, my name is Rachael Heisler. I'm an advocacy controller. I'm the current deputy city controller here in Pittsburgh. First, I'm going to just explain a little bit about the city controller's office. It's the third branch of government. We are the accounts payable, accounting, and auditing function of the city of Pittsburgh. Our top responsibility and priority is to maintain the independent voice for fiscal responsibility and make sure the city stays on the sustainable fiscal path. What does that mean? It means we can continue to pay our bills. It means we can honor the commitment to the city workers and city retirees. It means we make sure that city funds are spent in a way that's fair and equitable across all city neighborhoods. And we make sure that everybody pays their fair share. A little bit about my background. I've been with the city controller's office for the last 2 years. It's been 7 years for the committee for responsible budget, as Ross said. I moved to Pittsburgh in 2003 to attend the University of Pittsburgh, where I got involved in politics. And instead of following my family business of becoming a public school teacher, I got into politics. I have a master's degree from Penn State University. I'm a big advocate in good government and sustainable finance. My background is diehard believer in that everybody must have access and equal access to city government. It's the only way we can make sure that Pittsburgh is truly a city for absolutely every person in Pittsburgh. I'm a believer in living your values, as Ross said. I'm the board chair of my government's food pantry. We have a low barrier, produce stand at both the north side food pantry and at the Heights we operate every week. I'm part of the YMCA. We provide 90 SRO units for primarily men and transitional housing. And I just joined the board of an organization called Happy Women's in Pittsburgh to work with justice involved youth to keep kids working and to end the cycle of recidivism. That's me. I'm looking forward to the conversation this evening. Thank you to Monica for hosting.
Thank you. Tracy, your opening statement. You have 2 minutes.
Hi, everyone. I'm so sorry that I couldn't be there in person. Hopefully, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, good, because there was like an air conditioning or something going on when everybody else was talking, so I missed a lot of those points. You got some background on me. I just want to say that I have extensive experience in the city. I had worked under Mayor Tom Murphy. It's really important that the city controller also oversees the Pittsburgh Public Schools. I'm a graduate of the Pittsburgh Public Schools, and my kids went to Pittsburgh Public Schools, and they need a strong controller to partner with them because we need healthy public schools to have healthy communities. And right now, they're in a critical point where they need that support and they need that oversight, and we need to provide it. The other thing is the community is really important to me. I think a lot of you will know that. I will always show up. I've certainly been involved and come to many One Hood events throughout the years, and I plan to continue to do so. Community is so important to me that I started a listening tour on my campaign, and I'm really going out into the neighborhoods to hear what the people's concerns are, because I think that we need to open the office more into the community and really be responsive to the taxpayers about what their issues are. And the other thing is that I think that we need to recoup funds for the debt cliff that we're going to be facing. And I think we need to be really conscientious of not having that bear the brunt on the individual. It has to go to our large institutions that have not been paying the taxes that they should be paying and what they owe. So those are my big issues on day one. I have governed in the role as controller, as acting controller. So I know the landscape of how things work. And I am an outspoken person who will lend a voice to many. And I am excited to get started. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank everyone for your support. As we go, Ross will start our first question, and the order will be Mark, Rachael, and Tracy.
Thank you. So first question, this is fairly broad, so you touched on this a little bit in your opening statement, but why is the city controller important to the lives of Pittsburgh residents?
Why is it important to the lives of Pittsburgh residents? The city controller just plays a very interesting role that a lot of people don't realize. One of the roles is on the school board, and I don't think that the current administration has done enough to find out what the heck's going on with the tons of money that they've received. I mean, it's like $675 million, and the school programming is horrible. The teachers aren't treated properly, and like I said, there's rising violence. When we graduate, 47% of our students go on to secondary higher education. And that, taking into consideration Taylor Alderdice, is about 98. So probably split around the rest of the school district is 37%. That's just dismal. And you're the second highest elected official in the city of Pittsburgh. You're supposed to be able to impose your will upon that office. They have an $875,000 budget over there. What are they doing? Secondly, the ability to pay your bills. We do not get our bills paid on time. There's a clock in the city controller's office. We're on a 90 to 120-day wait list, no matter what my opponent says. And because of that, we are on a late pay list. We pay 10% over every good and service that the city of Pittsburgh buys. Take into consideration, I get $60 million of projects, and just that time, it's $6 million. Okay? Now, also on the subject of minority business owners. Most small minority business owners do not have a lot of capital. They can't afford to wait that long. They go out of business. Part of what I will do in the city controller's office is, part of my office will be to educate people who want to go into small businesses, how the paperwork is done, how the process is, help them get into the businesses, but on the back end, let them know and learn how they need to build the city. And not knowing the paperwork is a lot of the reason that the paperwork gets clogged up. It gets sent back time and time again. But let's educate the people and bring them up and help them up and not keep them down. And the controller's office has the power to do that.
Thank you.
Can I get 30 seconds to respond to that comment in 2 minutes? Or 2 for my answer?
All right. Was she the opponent you were referring to?
Yes.
Yes, thanks.
So if there's a delay in payment in the city controller's office, it's because something was done poorly and the city shouldn't pay an invoice for work that wasn't completed as directed by a contract. So I would love to know which contractor is complaining to you, Mark. But our bills are paid. Our bills are paid typically within 10 days. And if it has to go to the inspectors and we send staff out to review work that's done, to make sure it's done to the specifications of the contract. So the number one responsibility of this office and the way it impacts the life of everyday Pittsburghers is, I would say, the noticeable way is through our audits. Audits connect problems and solutions. They change the way things get done. I'll use in 2020, Pittsburgh voters passed a referendum, and the city controller and the Citizens Police Review Board are now doing audits every 2 years jointly. And the audit we released last spring noted that 90% of all marijuana arrests were Black people, which is, we can all agree, wildly unacceptable. So highlighting issues that exist in city government with disparate impact, is something that really impacts the lives of everyday Pittsburghers in a real way. Changing the way things get done to make sure that practice discontinues. We'll be starting another audit later this year and evaluating where we are with that. Effective scope will probably be the calendar year of 2022. I'll also gladly talk on PPS. Yes, the city controller is also the school controller. We are explicitly limited by School Code 006 and School Code 720 on what we can do. We have 7 auditors that work in the school district. We report to the school board of directors. We do internal audits on an ongoing basis. That work happens day in and day out. It has happened for as long as PBS and the school controller have had that relationship. So, and we also author the school's annual comprehensive financial report, which is on the PPS website. I welcome the opportunity for the school controller to do more. Until April of last year, school audits were handled by the Auditor General. And unfortunately, Tim DeFore, who's the state Auditor General, declined to, opted to close the school audit bureau of the Auditor General's office. So now no one is auditing the 500 public school districts across the state. Pittsburgh, here in Pittsburgh, we have a solution. We can allow the school controller to have expanded authority, fund that office accordingly, and make sure we have performance auditors on staff who can do that work. Thank you.
Am I permitted to respond?
You got it, quick, 30 seconds.
30 seconds.
Still-
In answer to her question, every single contractor, many contractors stop doing business with the city of Pittsburgh, and many good contractors won't do work with the city of Pittsburgh because of late payment. But in particular, 404s, which I went to Rachael to help me out. 2 years, 2 years. They did a wonderful job, and when the funds are authorized, they're authorized by the city controller and the mayor and the law department and our department. I put the invoice in 2 years, and they ended up suing. It went to law, and we lost, and we paid the legal fees too, and it happens all the time. Happens all the time.
Okay.
100% true.
In the interest
I'll show you the document.
Tracy, please, yes, I will get to Tracy's answer the question. Tracy, coming to you, why is the city controller important in the lives of Pittsburgh residents? You have 2 minutes on the clock.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I think that the city controller is really important, and it is a shame that more people don't understand what the controller is and what the controller does. And I think that's the very first thing that we need to do is we need to get out into those communities and make it obvious what the controller does and make it obvious that the controller's number one job is to be responsive to taxpayers. We are the protector and the watchdog of taxpayer dollars. And we haven't really opened the office enough to accessibility from the community, and we need to do that. We can talk about restrictions and the things that we're able to audit and not able to audit. But really, when it comes down to it, we are the office of possibility. There is so much that we can take on that we're not doing. And there's so much more that we can do to be responsive to the people. So 2 examples of that are when I went to the mayor's budget address and the people in Homewood were talking about just wanting their streetlights fixed. There is no reason that the controller cannot roll up their sleeves and say, why are they being told there's no money? This is a very simple thing, and we should meet our community's needs. And the other thing is, when we were in that UPMC and Highmark battle, people questioned about that being under the purview of the controller's office. But really, all of our taxpayers were affected by not being able to have their insurance cards used at the institutions that our taxpayer dollars built. So whether it's a formal audit or a community report or just going out and letting people have a voice, the controller's office should be doing that for everyone so that we have communities and governments for all.
Perfect. Perfect, thank you so much for that question.
Mhm.
For the next series of questions, it'll go Rachael, Tracy, and then Mark. And the question, your time starts once you start talking. Our second question is, in your view, should the city controller position be focused more on regulation or structuring the city's financial operations, and to what extent is that possible? Again, in your view, should the city controller position be focused more on regulation or structuring the city's financial operations?
So I think the opportunity there is we should be doing, the city controller should be doing both. Some duties are segregated intentionally. You can't have somebody making laws and then auditing the laws themselves. There's a reason that those duties are separated. The mayor is the executive branch, council is the legislative branch, and the city controller is the check and balance of those other two branches of government. But if there are regulations or policies or a financial situation that is impacting city residents, the city controller has a legal authority and a responsibility to look into that and make sure to either point out what's wrong. We don't have the power, the city controller doesn't have the power to change it. They have the power to use their voice and microphone to advocate for changes and to make sure that council and the mayor are aware of a problem and understand the opportunity or the responsibility to fix it. The fiduciary responsibility that goes along with being the city controller is wildly important. We cannot pay our bills. We cannot make smart, thoughtful, progressive policies throughout city government. It's impossible because we won't be able to pay for them. And Act 47 demonstrated that. We were restricted, state oversaw our finances and made those hard choices that city council should have been able to do on their own, but unfortunately our finances did not permit that, and we spent 13 years in Act 47. So I think the answer is both, absolutely. And when you see something that's wrong or has an impact on a particular neighborhood community, particularly one that's underserved, the city controller needs to use that voice and make sure that council and the mayor are aware of the problem and are given the tools, recommendations to go ahead and fix that on behalf of the folks who live there.
Thank you so much. Tracy, same question to you. In your view, should the position be focused more on regulation or structuring the city's financial operations?
So I would agree. It really needs to be both. And I think in terms of regulation and financial oversight, they really do go hand in hand. Because if you're really working and overseeing, the operations and the budget of the city and its departments and its authorities, the controller's office has the ability to not only amplify those issues, but to be able to, push the issue forward by partnering with, by structuring audits so that they are professionalized to be able to come to clear objectives together and move forward in how payments are made. Because to me, budgets are a statement of our values, and we want to make sure that all of the payments that are going out of the city through the controller's office are payments that are in accordance with all of the legislation that we've passed, with what our taxpayers will really ought to be. So the controller's office has the ability to stop payments to different contractors if they're not fulfilling what they should be fulfilling for the taxpayers. So to me, it goes hand in hand. I think the controller is independent in so many ways, but also has to be a good collaborator to bring everybody to the table to make sure that we're all working towards the common good.
Thank you. Mark, same question.
I absolutely agree with many of the things that Tracy said. And also the contractors. I'm not referring to people who haven't fulfilled their work requirements. I'm referring to people who have fulfilled their work requirements, and the people in charge of processing the payments from the departments put in proper documentation, and it's a lot of times rejected because the controller wants to make the mayor's office look bad. The controller definitely should be involved in some regulation, but in the form of the second highest elected official in the city of Pittsburgh, not in the roles of the controller, but he is the second highest elected official in the city of Pittsburgh. and should be able to work together. You should, I apologize, you should, but at this point in time, it happens to be a he. And, so anyways, they have the ability, as the second highest elected official, to work with the community, to work with other elected officials, to help set the tone for regulation. I'll give you an example of how powerful that position is. The controller before this one, Tom Flaherty, used the powers to basically break apart the pipeline. Many of the high-powered corporations in the city of Pittsburgh, were the third largest corporate city at the time, were heavily invested in apartheid, and Tom had the courage, and it hurt his political career, to take them on, and he took them down. And that's how powerful that is. And sitting behind a lot of codes and dots and dashes and being afraid to actually go to work and do the job and care about the community and be a true public servant, she or he can certainly do a much better job in that regard. And as far as the finances, yes, that's low-hanging fruit. You set your staff, you have an honorable system, and you are the watchdog. They like to say watchdog. I like to say the fiscal oversight responsibility person.
Thank you. So next question, and I apologize that I'm moving the screen here. My vision is non-existent.
The question order would be Tracy, Mark, and Rachel.
So this is pretty straightforward, but subjective. What experience, both in terms of like work experience, also personal experience, do you have that qualifies you for this position?
And I start, right? So I think that I am the most experienced person in this race. I have worked in the city for 6+ years. I have worked alongside the school district doing different executive committees and different functions there. I am extremely intimate with the Pittsburgh Public Schools, having been a graduate and having had children there. But my entire career has been about serving communities and giving people a voice. I started in mental health, and what really gave me the policy bug was, why are these people not getting the benefits they deserve? Who are making these decisions in these rooms? And I'm always questioning and challenging. This led me up to working in the county controller's office, where I was deputy director. I've been there now for over 5 years. But the biggest thing is I have governed in the position. And that is a critical thing. Actually governing in the position is a world of difference from serving as deputy, which I also did. So I know when you're the person out front and you have to make the decisions and you have to use your voice and you have to stand strong and stand firm in the face of adversity, it takes a certain kind of person and it takes a certain kind of temperament. And I know that I am that person because I have done that. And I know that I can keep pushing forward to get the job done. So that's my experience.
Thank you.
Mark, then Rachel.
Yes, all due respect to Rachel, who I do respect very much. I believe that I possess much more unique qualities and experience to assume this position. I started off my last career as an auditor in the Pittsburgh City Controller's Office for 7 years. During that time, I went to night school, graduated. Upon graduation, I was hired with Marriott International Corporation in Washington, D.C., and I really wanted we were rejuvenating a chain of restaurants which had gone downhill, and I really wanted to be an efficiency expert, operations director. I managed staffs, twice the budget staff of the current controller for over 20 years. My scope of management was about 120 employees. I was a small business owner, which gives you a very unique perspective on how to run finances in the community. I now have been a project manager with the city of Pittsburgh for over 8 years. Prior to that, I was the deputy operations director for the recorder of deeds office for Valerie Roberts. We pioneered minority equity hiring policies. Nobody was doing in the mid-2000s. And it's basically the similar role to the controller in managing that type of an office. In my role as the project manager, I was elected by my peers to oversee the pension board, to be one of the municipal elected representatives of the pension board, which oversees the day-to-day pension board operations. I also am an elected board member on the municipal comprehensive board, and collectively we manage $950 million of city of Pittsburgh employee investment funds. In my first stint with the city, I was the elected employee representative with the Pittsburgh Credit Union, an $85 million asset, and I was the president of that organization.
Thank you. Rachel?
Yep, thank you. So first and foremost, I'll be ready on day one. I run the daily operations of the city controller's office now. I've been there for the last 2 years. It's an awesome office. We have 1,000 years of experience with our 50 employees. We cut checks twice a week. We pay our city's bills, review contracts. We're the city's accounting function. We produce the city's annual comprehensive financial report. Our audits function, and we've in the last 2 months or year have opened a report section, which we've done work on pilots, on the service of the wage ordinance, etc. I am the person in this race that has been most familiar with this office, and I am going to be ready on day one. I have a background in sustainable public finance and government advocacy. Again, I said this earlier, but I believe this office sets the stage. So when someone complains about local government or government generally, it's often because they have experience at the local level as a negative. And if you can change that, you have the opportunity to change how people view government. I think that's an awesome responsibility. And I just, it cannot be overstated the role that this has, this role that this office has city residents like on a day-to-day basis. And then the other thing I'll just point out is I'm a believer in the Weaver values. You guys pass up for this once a week. I believe that city residents, everybody has to have access to city services that benefit, the communities that they live in. We have food deserts around the city. 42% of all Black Pittsburghers don't have access to the vehicle. We need to work on making sure that people can get around, that people who are in underserved communities have access to the same things that folks who live in cities that have access to. So making sure that that's how city funds are spent, the city money is spent in a way that's fair and equitable across all of the
Thank you so much for that. So for our next question, we touched on it a little bit, but this order will be Mark, Rachael, and Tracy, so the order that we started with. How do you think the city controller can work to ensure money is equitably spent to address issues of concern such as affordable housing and public safety? Again, the question is, how do you think the office of the city controller can work to ensure money is equitably spent to address issues of concern such as affordable housing and public safety?
I'd like to, what I would do is go to my staff, and I talk about restructuring the staff. I talk about restructuring the staff. And I'm surprised that Rachel went over the budget. She never seems to mention the rate of employees at the school board. They have 57 jobs in their office. And if you look at the model, they have 34 management positions and actually 33 people that do the work. I've never seen a model like that. I'll show anybody the budget, anybody that wants to look at it. Okay, I've looked at it 100 times. But on day one, I would audit the dysfunctional land bank. It is not repaired, remodel, walk on property. And since 2015, it's never done anything. That's where you start. Then you go to the corrupt URA and you audit them. Then you go to the disgraceful BLI department that can't do anything properly, and all three work in conjunction. And you make sure that they're operating properly, and these boarded up houses are getting redeveloped in the Homewood, in the Hill District, in Northside, in Manchester, and you assert the position as the second highest elected official in engaging the community to demand they don't solely like gentrification. That these homes go to call the person in the neighborhood, and maybe we set some kind of, ask the community development to set some kind of perimeters or guidelines for the type of people, income-wise, that can buy these homes. And that's the best way to establish that.
Thank you, Mark.
So, the housing authority of the city of Pittsburgh is a component of the city government. The city does not give them money. So for the last decade plus, there's been a debate between the city and the housing authority on whether or not we can audit them. Their determination is that it's the responsibility of the auditor general. My hope is that upon changes to council next year, regardless of who's elected, that they will codify the responsibility of auditing the housing authority to the city controller. We have not had a successful audit in the last 15 years. People have not been willing participants in the audit. That needs to change. We need to have a conversation about the public housing assets in the city of Pittsburgh, what the state and condition of each of these units is, whether or not they're safe and equitable and clean. I mean, there was a newspaper article, I think it was that which no one should look at because they're the way they're treating their workers. But they talked about black mold at Northview Heights, which is a community I spent a lot of time in. So I think that needs to be a fundamental starting point for the conversation on housing in the city of Pittsburgh. We need to have the audit authority over the housing authority. With the land bank, the city has allocated $200,000 in total to the land bank since 2018. The Star of the Beast model of city government. You don't allocate a project or priority money, it is not going to be successful. They've given through the American Rescue Plan $10 million over the next 2.5 years, and I'm hopeful that we'll see movement with the land bank. I think it's absolutely, there's a great opportunity there to transition people and build housing that's fair and equitable and clean and safe, which is the #1 responsibility of our housing programs. And that will just be generally, audits look at the way we spend money. That is literally what they do. It's a white paper. I worked at a think tank for 7 years before I joined the city controller's office. And if we can highlight issues that impact different people, different groups of people differently, I'll talk about the wage tax. We have a wage tax that's totally, completely regressive. If you make $10,000 a year, you pay 1.25% to the city of Pittsburgh. If you make $100,000 a year, you pay 1.25% to the city of Pittsburgh. That is regressive completely and entirely, and that policy can change in the state level.
Thank you. Tracy.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. Thanks. I'm going to go back to what I said from the very beginning, is that it's really important to get out into communities and see what the needs are in communities. And part of the reason that I'm doing that is I understand that audits are important and they highlight what is going on with the different departments and the different functions. The housing authority is just one small part of that. There's so much development going on around this city, and we have to make sure that it's responsible and that it's not pushing our homeowners out. We don't want to get to a point where we're pricing out the people that live here. We have to look at programs for seniors. We have to look at community by community. And I think that we should even do neighborhood audits to see how CDBG, community development block grants, are being spent, how neighborhood needs money is being spent, and make sure that it's going to serve the people who really need it. In terms of public safety, I would put that in the same realm. Where are more officers deployed? Where are different community programs going on, and what kind of support are we giving them? I think that that's really important, and it's really important to hear from people. The one thing I'll agree on is I don't want any of that brunt in distribution of dollars to go to the taxpayers. And Rachael mentioned the land bank. That's actually something I've been talking about since the very beginning of this campaign. Our neighbors in the Mon Valley have rehabbed 65 properties back onto the tax rolls in the time that we've done 0. And we need to do things like that so that we're bringing more money back into our tax base, not on the burden or not on the shoulders of individuals, but on the programs that we have funded and that we should be moving forward.
Thank you. So the next question is similar, but what role does a city controller have? I mean, the government is not explicitly, misspending or misappropriating funds? And how specifically will you carry out that duty, if and when you're in office? And we're gonna go, Rachael, Tracy, Mark.
So every penny that leaves the city of Pittsburgh comes to the city controller's office. So if we get an invoice for paving in Homewood, we see that invoice and we send inspectors out. This is sometimes the delay. We send inspectors out. If there's a crack in the pavement, if things aren't even, if there's already the pavement is already sinking, we will ask the contractor to come back to fix the work, to make sure it's done as it was instructed to be done per the contract. So that is first and foremost the most, that is the role of our office in making sure that the day-to-day money that we spend on city programming, priorities, et cetera, is spent in a way that's fair and as it was intended to be spent. The audits look at big picture type of things. We are in the middle of doing a public works audit at the moment, and something that was an idea that was floated was something that basically only benefited people who own their homes, which is totally unfair, right? There are a lot of people in Pittsburgh who don't own their own homes. So how can we make sure that we're prioritizing folks who, they don't own their own homes, they're renters? How can we make sure that that is a factor? You're not only evaluating homeownership, but you're looking at where people live more broadly. So if they're renters, there are a lot of multi-generational homes and grandparents living with their grandkids, et cetera. So ensuring that that is a consideration. And the one thing I talk a lot about is diversity in hiring, because if you have a Black woman who lives in Homewood and a white man who lives in Squirrel Hill, and they're doing an audit together, they're going to have totally different experiences with city government. And they bring that with them when they're working on an audit. So, look at crossing guards. If you are in a neighborhood that doesn't really see crossing guards and you don't have a lot of folks walking to school, kids walking to school, you're going to have a different perspective than in a community where there are ample crossing guards.
Tracy's next.
I'm sorry, Ross or Miracle, will you please repeat that, because the sound is a little choppy.
Absolutely. So, what role does the city controller have making sure that government is not explicitly misspending or misappropriating funds? And how will you carry out that duty once you're elected?
All right, with spending and what else?
With misspending, right? How do you make sure that the government is not explicitly misspending or misappropriating funds?
Okay, sure. Thank you. So, I think it gets back to, what we were talking about before, when we talk about equitable spending. There might be different projects that are going on in different neighborhoods, but you have to look at everything. You have to look at the paving list. You have to look at, the different priorities that are going on and make sure that those are done fairly. In terms of misspending and misrepresentation, one of the things that I know of in the city controller's office currently is that inspections are being done after a project is completed. And at the county level, we're actually going out and inspecting during the whole duration of the project. So we are making sure that the right materials are there, that the right workers are hired, that they're being paid a prevailing wage. And at any juncture in that project, if we see some kind of misspending or misclassification, we can, sound the alarm and we can withhold payment. So to me, I think that we really need to be in tune throughout the entire process of how our dollars are being spent, so that we can make sure that there's not any kind of waste at all. And I just think that by doing consistent reviews, not even at the auditor level, but even at the granular level of really seeing how things are spent from neighborhood to neighborhood and department to department, we can do special reports, we can do taxpayer alerts, and we can really hold the people accountable who are receiving public dollars.
Thank you. Mark?
Yeah, I just want to say on this one, I have to disagree with both Tracy and Rachael a little bit. First of all, Rachael, Tracy, I'll say this: the controller does send inspectors out through a project, and quite often they will call me and they will come out with me. However, it's not enough. But now to Rachel's point, they're not the ones to decide whether a sidewalk's scrapping or not. I take offense to that as a project manager. Let me explain to you how a project's done. First, we initiate the project, then the company gives us a proposal. Then if the proposal is acceptable, we issue something called a letter of authorization, which encumbers the funds and tells the contractor to go ahead and do the work. It's signed by the city controller, the mayor, the law department, our director, and whoever the project manager is, in my case myself sometimes. Okay? We do projects, we have a project kickoff, we set the parameters for the contractors, we set the guidelines, the project management team. Every 2 weeks, I'm on the site every day, boots in the mud. Quite often, I will respond to the controllers if I take photos every day, and I keep them updated. I have a great relationship with their inspection department. Quite often, they'll call me, and I'll take them up to the job site and walk them through and tell them what's going on. At the end of a project, when we call it partial completion, is about 80–90% done, and they're ready to turn the site back over to the city, we go out with the architects, the engineers for the project management team, the contractors, the subcontractors. We go over every inch of the project site. We then work out a punch list that we, the project management team, tell them has to be done. And never do we put an invoice through for payment until we are satisfied that the project was done to completion. How it could be made better, and it's one of the initiatives that I said. We need a project management team from the city controller's office to work with us daily throughout the project. And then they will know exactly what was done. And at the end of the project, we hand them an invoice and they process it.
Are we good?
Yeah.
Okay. So.
For sure. So next question, this one will be Mark, Tracy, Rachel. I'm sorry, I'm not speaking the microphone. I'm a voice etiquette, never one passing. So let's see.
Hi, Mr. Stevens.
Yes, so when it comes to transparency, just in general, when it comes to government, we know that requesting information is long, arduous, and a lot of times it's tedious as well. So like, how do you sort of streamline the right to know process as it relates to the, city controller? And generally, how will you make sure that community stakeholders are informed of what the office is doing?
Right now, there is a page that they already are, and it's being expanded to be made better. It's called Engage Pittsburgh. When the city engages into a project, our project management team puts every aspect of the project on the Engage site. You can follow it with photographs. You can follow it with update reports from our critical paths meetings. Also, the current controller has started the open book site, which is very helpful. But all of those things can be expanded upon and made better. And I believe that the entire system, really one of the problems with the system, it's the same system from when I left that office in 1990. The same except citywide, from top to bottom. It isn't all the controller, the whole system's broken. Anyone sits there and says, I should walk in day one and be the boss because I'm part of a broken system, it makes no sense to me. My candidacy is an advocacy for making the system better. We need to digitize the entire system from head to toe. I'm going to give you one quick example. Mileage reimbursements. In my job, I go out, I drive and use my car. And it isn't the controller's fault. This is still sitting in public works. I haven't gotten my December mileage yet. I can't file my January and February until I get that. I'm at $980. I'm just a common guy. Okay? On the other hand, I know state employees, their system has been digitalized years ago. They put in a mileage report on Monday, and they generally get it on Friday at the latest. And one of the problems is there's like one person who can authorize it. With their system, if that one person is off or sick or on vacation, it gets kicked up to the next one, kicked up to the next one. We need to have a more effective and efficient system, and going digital is the way. We need to work, again, as the second highest elected official with the gaming administration, with city council. We need to find the funds to do this, because not doing it is costing us a lot of money on the back end. It's like not insulating your home because you don't want to spend the $2,000, but your gas bills are $500 more each month.
Tracy?
Okay, I think I got most of the question. You asked about communication and streamlining the right to know process, correct?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so first I would say, on the surface level, the communication level for the city controller's office who participates in open book and open gov and all of that is great. But those are, national subscription models that do provide more information to the public. But I think that we need to go a little bit deeper than that. So part of that is just getting out into the communities. But the other part of that is that the controller's office at the city level does not currently have a solicitor and does not have a right to know officer. I think that they should have both. So the city controller's office does not respond to rights to know. Those go through the city law department. So that's actually just creating more red tape, making the process more cumbersome and taking longer. And it is just more bureaucratic for people. What should be happening is that there should be a standard that the controller's office is responding in right to knows in a timely manner and within 30 days of receipt. That's what we do at the county level, and that's what I think that we should continue to do. In terms of transparency, I feel like it's one of those words that, people like to say a lot, particularly when it comes to the controller's office. But I think that, you can't really say that and you can't really withhold that if you are not willing to really open yourself up for full view and full accessibility to the taxpayers.
Thank you. Rachael?
So first I'll just touch on the right to know request process. All right to know requests come in through the solicitor's office when something pertains to the city's mandates, city contracts, etc. It comes to our office. I work with our office to do that. I am effectively the right to know request officer in the city controller's office since our solicitor left last year. Our response time is usually within 5 to 7 days, business days, and we've never had a complaint or an issue. And in fact, when we get press requests currently, or anything from the public, even if it's not a reporter, I get requests on a regular basis, copies of contracts, explanations of things. You do an information session on open book. We always comply. If you need something that we have access to, you do not have to file a right to know request. You do not have to go through the law department. You can call our office, you can go to openbookpittsburgh.gov, and you can go to the email address, send a note, and we will get back to you as soon as we possibly can. That will continue. It is an absolute priority of this office. And I think it's the most important thing that we do when we are talking about transparency is you don't need to go through the right to know request if you need something from our office. Email us, we'll send it to you. Open Book Pittsburgh and Fiscal Focus Pittsburgh are not national subscriptions. They were built for the city of Pittsburgh. They were a long process to digitize city contracts, which is what Open Book is. Fiscal Focus is all money that is spent. It's updated in real time and reconciled with JD Edward, which is our accounting software. We also created in the last year an American Rescue Plan landing page, which has all ARPA spending that's been allocated, all ARPA spending that has actually left the city, left the trust fund, all ARPA American Rescue Plan contracts, and then it has a link to the federal filings that the Office of Management and Budget hosts and file quarterly. The city controller's office is the standard bearer throughout city government for transparency, honesty, and accessibility of your local government. That will continue. It's something that Controller Land has prioritized. It will be a priority of mine if I'm so fortunate to be elected. But it is, thank you. Those right to know requests, if you need something and we have it in our office, send an email and we'll get it to you within a few days. Thank you.
Can I respond really quickly? Can I respond?
Let Tracy respond and then I'll respond.
Okay. So, Tracy, you will have 30 seconds on the clock. Give me 2 seconds to pull up your 30 seconds. All right.
Okay.
Wait again.
I just want to say that I have heard several complaints that rights to know and requests for information have not been responded to from the city. And secondly, JDE is actually no longer the software system for the city, even though I raised red flags because the city has chosen to use the cloud. And that was at a great cost to the taxpayers, and they actually had to pay the county back because we are no longer working on that system together. So that's it.
And I'll just point out really quickly that the city is still using JDE, we're no longer using Allegheny County Service Center.
Okay. Well, Robert, for your 30 seconds, Mr. Moore.
Yes, I would just like to, real quickly, I would back you up on that. We do need to use the JPA system in the city of Pittsburgh. But my 30-second response also is on the transparency issue. And when I talk about remodeling the office, I've actually written it out already in structure. And one of the key offices I want to ask Mr. Ganey to give me is one, an equity officer to oversee the equity policies throughout the entire city, but I would like to have a community affairs person that goes into each community on a regular basis and has town hall meetings and explains everything that we're doing throughout the community.
Okay, who knew accounting could be so interesting? We are down to our final couple of questions. Do you have a question for?
These are good questions.
Good question.
I like it.
Tanisha has a question in the back. If you could
We want to do.
say it and then repeat it.
We use your mic actually.
Yeah, sure. Sorry.
So, one of the jobs of city controller is to protect the interests of taxpayers, make sure money is being given out fair and equitably. A lot of conversation has been happening around Cop City, and the city going to spend $120 million on that. My question is two-part. One, we believe it's in the best interest of taxpayers to publicly fund Cop City, and two, if not, what should the city do with the money that has been already allocated for Cop City?
Okay, so for the question is, it has been reported that the city of Pittsburgh is spending $120 million on what's being dubbed Pittsburgh Cop City. And so the question posed to Nisha is, do you support the city
Having the public fund.
having the public funds of $120 million? And if not, what would you advocate for that money to go to? And for this round, it's going to be Rachael, Tracy, Mark.
I believe in data-driven public policy. So if, I think Chicago is the city that I read about this morning where that has been a huge, there's been a big public investment. And I think it hasn't been well received. The police haven't liked it, the public hasn't liked it, and it hasn't produced anything that has been memorable in terms of success. So, I think we should look into and actually do research and demonstrate, what is this a good idea? Is it not a good idea? I would be inclined to think that spending that large of a subsidy or that large of direct financial support on a project is probably not in the best interest of city taxpayers, city residents, et cetera. But what I would say, the other thing is law enforcement shows up after an incident has occurred. So talking a lot more about prevention and investing in programs and priorities that keep, and these are a lot of the violence that we're seeing right now as kids. I mean, maybe they're 22, but they're still children. And making sure that we're investing in programs that keep kids out of trouble. I think that should be a priority, and I think that should be a fact, something we look at in the next police bureau audit that we'll do later this year. But that is, I believe, the data-driven public policy making. It's not perfect, and we need to also have conversations with people and understand what they care about and what is important to them. But data usually does paint a pretty good picture, and if it isn't working in other places, I don't know why we would invest in it here. And all data that I have read about in terms of these mega training facilities is that they actually don't produce the results that they are intended to produce, so I don't know why we would spend money on it.
Tracy, do you need us to repeat the question for you?
No, I'm good. I would just say, the very first thing, I think that it's important to state what you don't know. And I don't know a lot about cop cities. I saw, I believe it was actually in Atlanta, that it really didn't go as planned. And to me, that's a really hefty price tag why are we prioritizing all that money for something that we're not sure how it's going to work? We have all this like stop the violence prevention money that are going towards those programs, that Rachel's talking about, but shouldn't we first monitor to see how effective those are? And if we're talking about putting a cop city into a neighborhood, what is the neighborhood input? I think that when we're looking at police officers, we have to look at their roles in communities. And, sometimes it can be positive and sometimes it can be aggravating. I do agree that the police in this city need additional training. I do think that we need to get towards the level that we've budgeted for. We're budgeted for 900 officers, and right now we only have 800. So until we get to that point and really give our officers bias training and sensitivity training and understanding how to de-escalate situations, why are we going to make other investments that we're not sure what the return is? That's my answer.
Actually, this is something I'm personally involved with on two sides of it. First of all, I've been a major advocate, and Mr. Gaines adopted this policy moving forward that he came to it on his own accord. But for the last 8 years, I've been saying to people, in highest levels possible, because we renovate recreation centers. And one of the first things that I discovered when I went out, the Dudo administration hired me and said, put your boots on the ground. We're putting all this money into projects. Tell us what's going on out there. One of the first things that I identified was, and I was horrified at it, the inequity in the recreation and senior facilities in the underserved minority communities, especially the Black and Brown communities. Also, recreation center was a disgraceful how crap the city was ready to close it. The roof was rotting, paint chips were falling in children's lunch when they were eating. There was no handicap accessibility. My team personally saved Folsom Recreation Center. We went down to Dudo and Akron and said, we're not going to have this happen. We got our project scope management, we got a budget, we did a design, we showed them where we could find the money. I have been in Kinley Park, I found $2 million to renovate Kinley Park. I do a lot of work with Richard Carrington and Voices Against Violence. Mexican War Streets, Jefferson, we put it on the map, 4.7 million in art funds, and Phillips Park as well. Sheraton Healthy Active Living Center, $1 million. But a lot of that money needs to go into these recreation centers where we can grab these kids and culture these kids and save these kids' lives. That's what the city can do with their budget. There's programming. We have some of the most wonderful people who ever meet in parks, and they've dedicated their whole life to saving these kids. We need to give them the facilities, and we can do it for $20 million over for $50 million, not $180, or $200 million. And that's where it starts and stops. Let's stop the crime before it starts.
All right, so we are at time. We're going to give each of you 2 minutes for your closing statements. And it's going to go Rachael, no, this, sorry. It's going to go Tracy, Rachael, and Mark. So reverse order how we started. You have 2 minutes to make your closing argument. Why you're running, why people should vote for you, and possibly how people can get in contact with your campaign will probably be some good things to include within your 2 minutes. Starting with you, Tracy.
Okay, thank you guys so much for having me and for hosting this. I was going to say call, but some people are in person, but I really appreciate it. I really appreciate being able to talk to this community. I think that One Hood has done some really good things, also with Ben the Arc, and I have followed along for a long time. When I was acting controller, I never thought that I would run for any office. I honestly thought that I was always a behind the scenes person. And I really liked to get community involved and do whatever I could to make the areas in which I lived and worked better for everyone. But after being asked repeatedly why I didn't do it, why I didn't go for it, I began to really ask those questions of myself. And I know that I'm a good manager. I know that I'm a good leader. I know that I will do whatever it takes to stand up for people. And so I knew that I was compelled to really step up into leadership. And then when I knew that Michael Lamb wasn't running after 15 years, I saw an amazing opportunity there to really transform the city controller's office into an office that is more open to everybody, that will really push forward the hard issues like um, pilots and taxing our large nonprofits like they pay in Erie County and in other states, like being a true partner for our Pittsburgh public schools, and really looking at raising wages for workers all across the city. I worked hard to get county workers from $15 an hour to 18, and I will do the same at the city. I will always be open. I will always pick up the phone. My cell phone number is on my cards. It is also on my website. So please, if you want more information, visit Royston and the number 4 controller.com. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I hope to speak to you all soon. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, one Hood, Peter, thank you, Ross, thank you to Tracy and Mark for joining me this evening. So the number one responsibility of this office is to make sure the city stays fiscally healthy. If the city is not fiscally healthy, we cannot invest in priorities and programs and projects that benefit every single city resident. We had to borrow in 1998 for pension debt. We make our last payment on that in 2025. That's the debt cliff. And if we're borrowing and we're paying off debt, those are dollars that aren't going into our communities. Those are dollars that aren't investing in senior centers or youth centers. And that is the number one responsibility of this position, and I will be ready on day one. I've reiterated my commitment to living my values. I spend my weekends doing produce distribution in communities that are traditionally been underserved, and we need to change that in city government, and I promise to do that each and every day. The Pittsburgh Public Schools component is an important part of this. I'm so glad we're having this conversation as a city. PPS is our biggest vulnerability. Pittsburgh has traditionally been a city where working families can send their kids to public schools, and that's changing. If families are leaving and moving to Shaler or moving to Doron or Mount Lebanon, and they can't send their kids to Pittsburgh public schools, children in the city are entitled to a free, robust public education, first and foremost. And 2, 23% of all state revenue comes from our wage taxes. So if we can't keep families here, it'll actually hit our bottom line and make us even less able to make those investments in public spending and programming that benefits people who really need it. So I'll be ready on day one. I believe in the power of this position, and I'm going to use it to advocate for absolutely every city resident. And I appreciate your consideration. My website is Rachael for Controller, RACHAEL. FOR Controller or RACHEL FOR Controller. And my phone number and email are both on my website too. So I look forward to staying in touch with absolutely everyone. And again, thank you to One Hood and Miracle and Moss for hosting. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark.
I'd like to thank all of you two for hosting. I'd like to thank Mr. Stevens for all the great work he does. You do a lot for our community and we need you. I'd like to thank my opponents for this conversation. It's very important to get everybody's perspective, and hopefully, no matter who is victorious on May 16th, Shakespeare said 2 men ride on a horse, 1 must ride behind. In this case, 3 must ride behind. Yeah. But hopefully the other 3 will take some of the initiatives from the others, because everybody is great and they have a lot to offer, and incorporate it into making the controller's office better serve the public of the city, because that's what this is about, and that's why I'm in this race. I believe my well-rounded experience in government on both ends, from the controller's office, from the project manager's office, but most importantly, in the corporate environment, knowing how to tweak and twist the system to make it more effective and efficient is what makes me the person to be ready on day one for this position. But once again, like I say, the city controller should never run for another office, especially one where they have auditing power over. This has happened too often. And I will pledge that I will never run for another office while I am holding this office. I'm asking the voters to elect me so I can do this job and do this job right. And you should never run for an office where you hold auditing power over the person you might run against. It just builds an iron curtain, in the whole system, and that's part of the problem. And I'd like to ask my fellow citizens who are running for this position to make the same pledge and demonstrate that they truly care about the public service of this office and not the self-service of their political career. Once again, I thank you for having this conversation. During this Lenten season, I'd just like to say, may Jesus be on your shoulder, and good night and God bless.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to everyone that joined us virtually. This has been an edition of the Power Hour Forum. We'll see you guys next week for our digital forum. I'm so sorry, man. I took another break, didn't I? No. Oh, okay. Thank you so much. See you next week.
One thing, as of today, we will know by tomorrow morning, the unofficial candidates who are going to be running for office. Our municipal election is going to happen on Tuesday, May 16th. So if you saw somebody tonight, and I want to vote for that person, you have on May 16th to vote for them. That is going to be our election day. If you want to vote, but you say I can't be here, you have until May 9th to request your mail-in ballot, and you have until May 1st to register to vote. And so I'm Rachael Jones.
I'm Royston.
And I wish you good night.
All right.
Give it a 5.